Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate that very much. Everybody can hear me fine, right? Okay, I'm just making sure that the clicker's working okay. I got this all panned out. So I'd like to take everybody on an interesting journey back in time. A somewhat kind of personal journey to a very specific point in time. To be specific, it is September 28th, 1997. That wasn't the year I was born, and that was not the day I was conceived. But it was the beginning of a very interesting chapter of a journey that I think would be very interesting to everybody here. So I figured we'd all get the opportunity here to go back in time together. Okay, just make sure the plutonium's good. So welcome to September 28th, 1997. The most popular toy in the entire world was a primitive AI pet. Apple stock was actually selling for 16 cents on the dollar. I would argue that, this was actually the #1 selling album on the Billboard charts. Master P's Ghetto D, probably known for pissing off graphic typographers everywhere. Also, 15,000 light years away, our friends at NASA actually discovered a star 40 times the size of our sun and was entering its nebula phase. Just so happened on that exact date, there was a young scientist who was at home watching ABC's The Wonderful World of Disney. Toy Story was the movie playing, and somewhere in between the intermission and the finale, he saw this.
Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
"28 years ago, 1 month, 23 days ago. I still get goosebumps when I hear that. I still get goosebumps when I see that. I didn't know at the time, but those 60 seconds would actually chart a course of very interesting exploration and discovery for me. It led to this ever-arching question of getting lost in the idea of, what if curiosity was your compass? We're all inherently explorers. It's wired into our DNA. I think it's something that we just generally do in terms of how we grow, how we learn. And thinking through this, I think what's really intriguing and important about it is the fact that curiosity is what allows us to connect the dots. So, in the spirit of this evening, I invite everybody here to do what explorers do best. Get a little lost, make some unexpected connections, and see where the journey takes you. But before we jump into it, maybe a quick little round table in terms of who your navigator is for the evening. Here's 10 interesting and maybe not so interesting things about me. let's start with a favorite book, On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. If you haven't read it, it's a must read, full of data-driven discovery, lots of interesting self-reflection. It's an awesome adventure story. Pretty good for a guy who dropped out of medical school. Favorite movie? A boy who believes that nobody in the entire world understands him. He ends up befriending an alien in the process. Favorite superhero, Spider-Man. Nerdy kid, too much responsibility, radioactive problems, very relatable. And if you're ever wondering what his formula for his web fluid is, it's right there. So everybody take a quick little screen grab. Favorite sport? Too short for basketball, too skinny for football. For some reason, this weird little power to weight ratio that I have actually makes me feel very at home on a rock wall. Favorite way to spend a day? Getting lost on a mountain without cell reception. Rounding out these 10 items here. My name means peace. I'm a functional introvert. I have dyslexia. More on that a little bit later on. I've been known to sketch with words and write with pictures. One of my favorite little pastimes is I love to cook. My kitchen's my lab. Favorite specimens, vegetables. And finally, I think this kind of goes a bit without saying here, but science is in my DNA. My dad was a nuclear physicist. My mom was a surgical transplant nurse. I was a nerdy kid who was severely allergic to cats who wanted to be a famous scientist one day. Specifically, I wanted to be the next this guy. Only cooler. With better hair and more style. But how does somebody go from wanting to be like a cooler Charles Darwin to ending up in a creative career? Short answer, it's a really long story. So I will give the Cliff Note versions. So, one nerdy kid plus 2 Asian parents with very scientifically driven aspirations, multiplied by reasonable expectations, equals the absolute zero of no pressure whatsoever, right? No. There's actually quite a number of unseen variables here. The X factor here in particular. X equals capital W plus capital T plus capital F to the power of 2. I was good at math, I was good at science, but algebra and I just didn't jive. I think because there's another unforeseen variable that I didn't really account for at the time. I had undiagnosed dyslexia. So when you add that to the equation and you divide, you end up getting even more confused. So where does this confusion go? Well, it goes to a few places. It goes to a few places. Show your work. I think we've all kind of heard of those math problems before, 13 heads, 40 legs, you're hanging at a dog park. How many humans to dogs are there? I had to sketch my way through math class. I drew quite a number of 3-legged dogs and 2-headed people. That's how I solved that problem. It's just kind of the way that I went about my mathematical endeavors. And it just so happened, the universe kind of throws some weird curveballs as well. I got invited to the grad show for one of Art Center's fall terms. I'll just say it was not the experience I thought it would be. It was one of those things where I had more questions than I had answers for. And I followed my curiosity, actually ended up enrolling in one of the extension classes. And what was intriguing about the extension class was I had a teacher who had 20 some odd plus sketchbooks at the time. And he said something that just resonated with me to this very day, which was, if you want to be a creative person, you have to be curious about everything. You gotta love research. And he said, see all that? Research. He had me at research. Being the nerdy science kid I was in. And then one day, he was drawing on the board this diagram. It was a lot rougher. He did it in chalk, obviously, but the design thinking loop. And I remember looking at this and just scratching my head going, wait a second. Okay, there's testing, there's experimentation, there's hypothesizing and defining a problem, there's research involved. This is a fucking scientific method. The only difference here is it swapped out that sterile white lab coat for a really cool black leather jacket. But it became like this basis in terms of like just thinking about, you know, how the world would work and how everything was connected. 2 light bulbs went off in my head. One was like, oh, okay, I want to be a designer. The second light bulb exploded because I knew exactly what I had to do next. I had to go home and tell my parents the 10 words all parents love to hear. Mom, Dad, I've decided to go to art school. Cue the little mindset of, our boy's gonna starve. I didn't, actually. And I will say, you know, I've been in this industry for about 20, 25 years, and it's been an interesting ride. Along the way, I feel very fortunate to have a very eclectic and evolving array of work. Research, homework, like every project teaches you a lesson. And what came of it was numerous lessons that all came together to creating a foundation for what creativity and problem solving, I think, is. But amongst all of those, I actually have 5 to share. These are my 5 little cheat codes that I carry around with me everywhere I go. The first one is, ideas belong to everyone who helps them grow. My grandparents raised 10 kids on a farm in the Philippines. Little spoiler here, my grandfather turned 102 today. Yeah, they've been married 81 years, and you're still, I don't get it. I don't get it. But they had this fundamental belief that even though the 2 of them were the ones who, you know, selected and planted the seeds, everybody in the family, all 10 kids, took part in nurturing that plant to its full potential. When it was time to harvest it, whatever that crop became was shared amongst everybody. Everybody had skin in the game. If my grandfather and my grandmother were sitting here today, I bet you they would tell you that actually every bite was more delicious because of that. Ideas are the same way. We grow them, we share them. That's how they reach their full potential. Number 2, seek out negative feedback. I had a creative director who once told me, well, not once, probably about 30 times, be kind, be honest, but make sure that be clear about what it is that isn't working. This is a touchy kind of subject because I think to this day it's something that I still continue to struggle with. Vulnerability is hard. You know, I get it. People don't like being criticized. It can cut deep. When we create something and we put it out there in the world, we put a part of ourselves out there. And when it gets bashed, sometimes it becomes personal. But that negative feedback also is the fertilizer for growth in a lot of ways. And I think when you think about it through that lens, you know, if you want to get better, you got to get real. Make it matter, make it memorable, make me care. There's a great Pixar quote that says, you know, in the personal, we find the universal. They're masters of this lesson. Every movie I watch, I always keep this in mind and I take judicious notes about it. If you think about all their movies that they make, everything that comes together, like the story about, brand new toys. It's actually a story about growing up. Life Outside the Reef, it's about trust, learning to let go. A House with a Bunch of Balloons, losing a loved one, going through the motions of having the will to go out on another adventure and sharing that life. All of those things come together in terms of thinking about make sure that the work we do matters, it's memorable, and it makes you care. Never stop being a student. That's a page from one of my sketchbooks, actually. I had another teacher who had this term that he shared with me called ubiquitous capture. I've been sharing it with a few of you who came in a little bit on the earlier side here today. In case you don't know what a ubiquitous capture is or unfamiliar with that term, here's an example. There's some examples over there. When we do Q&A, we'll get the opportunity to kind of do a little show and tell. The point behind ubiquitous chapter is to think about living your life in constant research mode. Like everything's always on. Collect things, take notes, have a repository for things you find interesting. When you do that, your life is richer, your understanding of the world and how it interacts becomes richer, your work gets richer, and I think that all starts with just being curious. And finally, be you. Inspired by the legendary man with a trolley, Mr. Rogers had this very interesting fundamental belief. At the end of every single show that he had that aired on PBS, he would always look directly at the camera and he would talk to every child that was at home watching. And he would say, "You made today a very special day by just you being you. There's no one else in the world like you, never was, never will be." This thought that we are this collection of experiences, emotions, and energy that will only exist once in the entire history of time was fundamental to the land of make-believe. I think that's pretty amazing. His philosophy really centered around this thought that perspective is how you see the world, and how you see the world is how you change the world. So being you is not just enough, it's your creative superpower. So let's continue our little time journey. I like to put all those lessons to use. What you're seeing here is Q1 2009. The housing market bubble burst. The stock market was still going through free fall, and agencies everywhere were downsizing at rates they haven't seen. Some of you probably were aware of what happened during that time. At the same time, I was actually called into a secret meeting at a conference room in the back of the agency. Okay. 2 words that came about during that meeting. Agency restructuring. Translation, 3 words that I think of. Fuck, I'm fired. Actually, I wasn't. They told me that, hey, we're actually reassigning you. You're now going to be focused on growth initiatives. You're part of the growth team. Cool. Sigh of relief. Excited, curious, new team, new projects, new adventure. Awesome. And then they gave me the brief. global pitch for cat food? Well, here's bonus number 11. I remember during that particular meeting, just going through the motions of looking through that brief and pulling aside one of my creative leads and telling him, I'm the wrong guy for this. I don't get cats. I don't get cat people. If you put me on this project, I will thoroughly disappoint you. Please don't make me do that. And he looked at me and he said, that's why you'd be perfect for this. And I was like, no, don't tell me that. He said, be you. I'm like, all right, you're channeling your Mr. Rogers, fine. Nerd out. Oh, geez, now he's like laying it on real thick. Just go do your Paxton thing. So I did. Put a big giant N95 mask on before COVID. Everything short of a hazmat suit. I had really bad asthma. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to get in touch and channel my inner Charles Darwin. I'm going to go study the world of cats. And I'm going to write a thesis on them. Inside the mind of cats and the misunderstood humans who love them. Something strange happened during that time. 2 weeks of research. There's a term called illurophilia, which means a fascination with felines. I got it. Somewhere in there, I got it. It was a very odd experience. I spent time crawling under couches, getting stuck in trees, having very uncomfortable staring contests, which I always lost. But something rose out of all that research, which was, wow, every single cat that you see here is their own unique character. They're very odd and weird and just wonderful because they are who they are. So I wrote a thesis. Every cat is a character. Actually, it's a pitch manifesto. Every cat is a character, from the daredevils to the observers to the ninjas to the clowns. One moment they're acrobats, the next they're couch potatoes. They are warm as they are cold, they are tender as they are tough. They are perhaps the most complex creatures in the world, and while we may never fully understand them, they are who they are, and that's why we love them. We are Whiskus and we love our cats. It gave us free range to develop all these insights of being inside the mind of a cat and coming up with characters. We have the Zen assassin. No one ever said they had human-like reflexes. We had the diva. Snooty, proud, unforgiving, and you just can't get enough. We had the trickster. You're human. And we had the resident philosopher who pondered some of the most existential questions in the entire life of all cats. Why don't they make mouse-flavored cat food? We had the heiress. We had the alpha cat. And Mr. I got 9 lives in, we call him Mr. Too Legit to Quit. Some of our print ads also took the form of like cat confessionals. So this was the spaz. This was the shamer in training. This was the princess. This was human's arch nemesis. you think you're so powerful with your opposable thumbs. There were a lot of characters that came out of that research. And putting it all together, we decided, well, let's create a habitat for them, right? Where would they be most at home? The internet. They've existed in there, and they will continue to exist in there. So I think what's interesting about that is there is one more thing regarding all of this. I've had the wonderful opportunity of sitting in the audience with a few of you over the occasional Thursday. I took notes. I took lots of notes. I saw some beautiful renderings, some great architectural design, transportation sketches, and all kinds of things. And I was thinking in terms of when Max and I were talking, what is the lecture going to be about? I went the opposite. I didn't want to pick a project that had a lot of sex appeal. It's cat food. It's processed meat in a bag for cats. There is nothing sexy about it, except for the fact that there was an inherent lesson. Through all the scratches and Benadryl overdoses, there was this feeling of, okay, lesson learned. Sometimes the most rewarding and most intriguing projects you'll ever work on has nothing to do with what you know, but what you're willing to learn. So to that, I actually have a bonus. Together's better. Collaboration is the force multiplier when it comes to creativity. I'm actually kind of noticing there's my homeboy Jesse's here right now. You're featured. I'm going to continue on this time travel journey for a moment. The year is 2022. The end of the year, so we're talking around the same time, November and December. And we get briefed on the project that everybody wants. Every single creative wants to do. The agency holiday card. That project where it's like, just come up with something snappy, something charming, send it, and let's hope that our clients remember who we are next year. Sure. For context, this is 2022. As far as how everything is happening at the moment, the state of COVID-19, or the stage, is still considered pandemic. Everybody is still, for the most part, working from home. And in the midst of all of this, we actually have a network of 25 agencies and 2,700 employees, all of which, were part of this celebration, which was the end of 2022. So follow your curiosity. Be open to collaboration, to negative feedback. A weird and ambitiously disruptive idea kind of rose from that. As we were having brainstorms via Microsoft Teams, the question was, what if we turned our meetings into the content of the holiday card? So, on December 22nd, 2022, we sent all of our clients, our partners, and our teammates an email, an invite to a meeting.
Better
300 volunteers, all 25 global offices, hours and hours of in-depth webcam choreography, and an editor who hates me. But man, that was fun. I see Tasha over there. Hey, Jesse's over here. Some of the creative leads and co-conspirators of this magnificent mess that it is are actually here today, and it means a lot that you came. Going back to, thinking about we went from cat food to an agency holiday card. These are not new car launches. This is not a new fashion brand, but it can still be cool if you allow curiosity to be your compass.